Hello, everybody, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live. For those of you who don't know me, my name is 𝗚𝗚𝗓𝗄𝗃, and I'm the founder of 𝗵𝗺𝗀𝗀𝗃 Suicide Prevention. And today we are very lucky to be joined by two of our integral team members at 𝗵𝗺𝗀. So firstly, we've got David Savage. So David, I don't know if you want to quickly introduce yourselves.
Yeah, sure. Hi, good evening, good afternoon, maybe. So I'm David, I'm CTO here at 𝗵𝗺𝗀. My team and I are responsible for the development of the browser extension and the supporting services. My background has been a mix of IT and audio-visual systems development before starting a software development company in 2016. And we've been making transformational software for in those 8 years since.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, David. And we're also joined this evening by Craig Butler. So Craig, over to you.
So good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Craig Butler. I'm the Wi-Fi integration manager at 𝗵𝗺𝗀. I oversee all aspects of 𝗵𝗺𝗀's Wi-Fi solution, ensuring it's reliable and secure for our users. My background is 12 years of educational online safeguarding, and have a strong background, obviously, in the network security and the compliance side of that as well. So lovely to meet everyone tonight.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Craig. So those of you then who have dialed in today are probably familiar with 𝗵𝗺𝗀 and what it is. But for those of you who aren't, a brief recap really for you. 𝗵𝗺𝗀 is an organisation that was set up in memory, actually, of my brother Josh, who we lost to suicide back in November of 2020. And in the immediate aftermath of losing Josh, it became evident actually that he had been going on the internet and searching for how he could end his life. And it was those searches that enabled Josh to see harmful content, including instructions, step-by-step guidance, and even encouragement to end his life. So in terms of what 𝗵𝗺𝗀 actually is, it's a piece of technology designed to intercept those harmful content and questions and searches that people are conducting, and instead direct them to a message of hope that things will get better and signpost people in need to that immediate mental health support that they can access both now and in the longer term. 𝗵𝗺𝗀 is available to be downloaded in two different ways. The first way is as a browser extension, where individuals can download 𝗵𝗺𝗀 on their laptops and desktop computers. And secondly, 𝗵𝗺𝗀 is also available to implement and deploy through Wi-Fi networks. And we're going to go through that in a bit more detail as we move on throughout this evening's session. So why are we actually here today? So very exciting. We have been working hard behind the scenes to expand our capabilities at 𝗵𝗺𝗀. As I mentioned a moment ago, 𝗵𝗺𝗀 is a piece of tech that intervenes at the moment on harmful searches to do with self-harm and suicide. But I'm very, very pleased to say that we have expanded that capability to now intervene and interrupt harmful searches on a range of other mental health challenges, life challenges and conditions that people go through on a day-to-day basis. So here, I just wanted to really give you a bit of an overview around the wider picture surrounding the topic of suicide and the growing crisis that we find ourselves in. You can see here 46% of people who die by suicide already had a known mental health condition. And I think that's really important because it does show that usually there is something that someone is going through that actually enables that person to go on and make that decision to end their life and really contributes to them experiencing those suicidal thoughts. Also in the middle, you've got here 1 in 6 workers now experience a mental health problem at any one time. Again, quite a stark statistic, and I think it really demonstrates that mental ill health, suicide, simply doesn't discriminate. It can happen to any of us at any time, and the chances are that if you haven't experienced it, one of your colleagues probably has, or might even be going through something difficult or challenging now. And on the right hand side, we've got a statistic here number one cause of work limiting conditions among employees below the age of 45 is now mental ill health, the number one cause. So again, it doesn't discriminate. This really can impact anybody. And the work that we do at 𝗺𝗺 is designed to support individuals who are going through tough times and to signpost them to the bespoke immediate support that they need to get better and to get through what it is they're going through at that time. So this slide then really demonstrates the areas, the categories that 𝗺𝗺 is expanding out to. And it's really important, I think, here to note that this doesn't mean 𝗺𝗺 is going to become a gambling charity, or 𝗺𝗺 is going to be specialising in financial struggles. We're still very much a suicide prevention organisation. But the reason we've expanded to each of these areas here is because every single one of them come with an increased risk of somebody going on to experience suicidal thoughts. Now, there's a couple here that I wanted to touch upon. The first one is divorce and separation. If somebody is going through that often really difficult, tough time of a divorce or separating from their partner or husband or wife, they are actually 3 times higher to experience more likely to experience suicidal thoughts than someone who isn't going through that. So there's a huge risk factor there. The second one that I wanted to touch on here as well is around financial struggles. And the reason here that this one in particular is quite pertinent, particularly to me, is because my brother Josh was absolutely one of those individuals who would fall within that category. In the week leading up to Josh making that decision to end his life, he had actually been going online and applying for over 72 payday loans. I have absolutely no doubt that his finances and his situation that he found himself in with money was a contributory factor as to why Josh ended up making that decision. And the rest of these categories are all equally as important. I think David and Craig have got some comments on a few of these as well.
Yes, there's some big ones here really in terms of risk factors. You know, one of the larger ones is substance misuse. And substance misuse of any kind is a comorbidity of poor mental health, with one driving the other and vice versa. Those who do suffer with substance misuse are 14 times more likely to experience suicidal thoughts and or attempt suicide. Another large area here that we're looking at and providing support for is autism. And it does make accompanying mental health issues more difficult to deal with, particularly when it comes to repetitive and intrusive thoughts. So a person with autism is 9 times more likely to attempt suicide.
And yes, the final couple that we've got is people who have been sexually abused as a child are 3 times more likely to experience suicidal thoughts. This problem has only been exacerbated since the pandemic, with an increase of up to 400% in child sexual abuse material now hosted online. While individuals struggling with gambling face a staggering 15-fold increase in risk. This is especially concerning with online gambling content has become more widespread and more accessible than ever, furthermore exposing potential harm. And addressing these factors is a potential way of better support and intervention for those users.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We weren't alone in expanding our capabilities at 𝗺𝗺 into those areas. None of us are experts in those particular fields. So we have worked collaboratively with over 40 advisory board members. Now, these members are people who have really immersed themselves in each of their respective topic areas. And they're classified really as subject matter experts, either because they work in the field or because they have actually had lived experience of each of these conditions, or they've dealt with a loved one who's been going through these particular conditions or life challenges as well. We've had several meetings with our advisory board members. They've helped us shape what 𝗺𝗺 is from the look and the feel to the words and the phrases that would trigger the Ripple tool into action, right the way down to what resources we should be signposting people to in that moment of crisis relating to that specific mental health challenge or life condition. And they've been absolutely wonderful. We wouldn't have been able to expand our capabilities without these people. So just some of them are on the screen in front of you now. There is a page on our website, 𝗵𝗺suicideprevention.com, which goes in a bit more detail about who our advisory board members are. But I just wanted to say on behalf of Ripple, thank you so much to each and every one of those individuals who has helped us and supported us and guided us through this process, because we are going to be helping many, many more people with their mental health struggles as a result of your help and support. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next slide here then is around really the role the internet plays in online safety and suicide. And you can see here the statistic here on the left-hand side shows that 1 in 5 web results actually in a single click link to content now which either celebrates, glorifies, or offers instructions about self-injury, suicide, or eating disorders. 1 in 5 results. Now, that's really shocking because I'm sure you'll all agree none of us want any of this harmful material to be actually up on the internet in the first place. Sadly, the reality is that it does remain, at least for the time being. And it's a bit of a shocker really to see, because it does show that of those 5 particular searches, one of them every single time is going to be harmful, and it is going to have that link to self-harm and suicide. So very dangerous world that we live in the internet. And of course, we're here at Ripple to try to mitigate that risk and to get people the support that they need and provide them with the hope that they need to get through what they're going through without actually going to have a look at some of that harmful material that might exist.
And then on the side of obfuscated content, which to explain is using seemingly Bengal terms to find harmful content, often started on social media and minority forums. It'll be hashtagged so that you can find this content, maybe by chance, maybe through links. But once you have that term, that obfuscated term, you can go back and find more of the same. And this is where we at Ripple manage to stay in front of those trends by updating our systems so that we can keep on with those trends and make sure that we show our signposting when those obfuscated terms are used. Like, for example, what a particular dish you had for dinner last night is one of them. And these searches are providing real results of harmful content kind of under the noses of the big tech companies who aren't quite on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think really then there's a few bits here to unpack. And Dave, I'm going to start with you and just ask you a few questions, if I may. Within the digital landscape then, how does Ripple, and particularly Ripple's new expanded protection that we're talking about in this session today, address those particular challenges that you've mentioned there?
So I always say that we exist by necessity, and we fill in the gaps that are left by the large tech and social businesses to protect the end user of their services. So, I think we're filling in where they should be helping out really, and putting rules and regulation in. By incorporating the extra categories as we have, we hope to capture more of that harmful search intent and show relevant signposting earlier on in the process, earlier on in their journey, before it gets so serious. So we're looking to present easy to access support services to people before they get to a real crisis search relating to what would trigger our suicide, self-harm pop-up.
And we all know, don't we, working in this area, that unfortunately content around self-harm and suicide, methodology and so on, is constantly expanding and developing, and it's a real task actually to try to stay ahead of the game and keep keep on top of those emerging risks, how would you say Ripple stays ahead of new and emerging risks in the whole world, really, of online safety?
Well, I think primarily it's down to our advisory boards and the input we have from the outside, but how we implement that is key. We've got a state-of-the-art content system that allows up-to-the-minute updates to be sent to all of our users, currently 2 million of them globally. We regularly and carefully spend time analysing trends in suicidal ideation, as well as trends in the new expanded categories. And with that input from the advisory boards, general public who contact us through the website, we assess those terms, phrases carefully. We notate why they should or shouldn't go into our database. And when they do go in, they're loaded onto those 2 million machines within 24 hours.
Okay, so with that in mind then, if I'm a parent and I've come across a perhaps new term that I wasn't familiar with before, that I would deem to be harmful and that I think Ripple should be intercepting, how would I suggest that to Ripple so that they can incorporate that in their trigger words going forward?
Yeah, that can be suggested to us via the website or via email. I think the website's the best way to go. There's a link to it, I believe, in the footer, and we'll put a link in the comments here where you can suggest search terms. That goes through to our team for our assessment. It may go to the advisory boards as well if we feel there's any ambiguity there. And if it's not in the suicide self-harm category, we spend a lot of time determining whether that should be a high severity search term or a lower severity search term, which we'll get to a bit later on in the presentation.
Amazing. Thanks, Dave. All right. So, Craig, I'm going to come to you next. And at the beginning, you mentioned your quite extensive work in online safety within your role, particularly at NetSweeper. And obviously, you've been helping Ripple now for several years in this field as well. But from your perspective, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges in online safety?
The biggest issue at the moment is the amount of new content that is created. I mean, we're at the click of a button for most of it being created now. Gone are the days of having to have a basic understanding of how to build a website, buy a domain, host it, let alone dealing with the challenges of a dial-up connection, if some of you are old enough to remember that. With all this new content, though, brings challenges in protecting users against this harmful content. Did you know, Alice, back in 1996, there was only 250,000 websites in existence? In 2025 now, there's over 1 billion. And that doesn't include any of the content created on social networking websites like X and Facebook, which run into the billions on their own. This problem we now have, there are insufficient protections in place from organizations like Facebook, Meta, TikTok, just to name a few. And harmful content, as I think we're all aware, grows and amplifies with these targeted algorithms that they have in place. And then it becomes an echo chamber for those users, with harmful content constantly being kind of recycled into their timelines. Kind of with this challenge, it kind of Ripple has had to step up where others haven't. And obviously we intervene, as you're well aware, like in these kind of range of subjects to give the users the help and support they need. It's only going in one direction, and organizations like Ripple are needed because ultimately, I think at the moment, big tech isn't stepping up to where they need to. So it's only going in one direction, and I think organizations like ourselves kind of stem that tide and kind of push it in the right direction and push people back to kind of, you know, helpful information on where they can go and get help when they most need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And from your perspective, obviously you're completely immersed in the world of web filtering. In your opinion, how would you say Ripple differs from what is out there already?
I mean, most of us day to day have some level of web filtering thrust upon us. It might be in Starbucks when we're having our coffee and trying to access something. They will have a web filtering solution in place. Your mobile networks currently will have a level of web filtering in place, whether that be to stop your kids from getting the gambling websites or pornography websites. But typically these websites of web filters just block content. They don't necessarily stem the tide. So the big difference between kind of Ripple's web filtering solution, or Wi-Fi solution as we call it, we go beyond that. So first of all, when someone accesses content, we don't just block them. We signpost them with information on where they can go and get help to stem that tide and stop that vicious circle of them reaccessing content time after time. Again, how we analyze that content as well. All of this is done in sub-second. Obviously, as you mentioned, it's powered by /NetSweeper, and that technology is used to analyze new content as it comes out and then make decisions. And upon us detecting whether that is self-harm or suicide content, as well as the other categories that we're looking to introduce, we can intercept that and then redirect the users to the message of hope. So it goes beyond what we've had traditionally seen web filters do. And I think it's a move in the right direction. It's great, obviously, blocking this content, but all it does is it drives people underground, and Ripple solves that issue with redirecting the user to the message of hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Craig. So we're going to do a little bit of a demonstration to you around what the new Ripple capabilities look like and how that works. And then we can come back and ask David and Craig some questions about that as well after we've seen the demonstration. So David, over to you.
Okay, thanks very much. Right, welcome to the live demo, emphasis on live. Just reminding everyone that this is live. I'm going to do it now. Okay, so for obvious reasons, I'm not using real search terms here. We have test terms. They're slightly technical, so please ignore them. Don't try and understand them, but I know what they mean. Don't worry. We're going to start off looking at substance misuse signposting. So we've got two levels within that category. There's high severity and low severity. For the high severity, we show a pop-up like we do in suicide and self-harm. So if we just go ahead and trigger that now. Here it is, he's popped up. We've got a Google whack. There's no 𝗵𝗺 7 high results at all on the web. It's just us and our keyword. And this is our pop-up that has come here to the front of the screen, showing our message of hope, encouraging the person to dial 999 if they need to, if they're in immediate danger, and then local services for the location of the user. In my case, I'm in England, so I've got services that work in England and that are open now, and that's a key piece for us as well. So these talk to someone now items would only show services that are available at the time the pop-up pops up, so that if the user on the receiving end of this signposting calls the number, they can get through to someone. If they click on web chat, it's open, and that's super important. You can see here we've got the Frank logo and a link off to their website to bring in some of that that branding and trust that we had from that organization. If our user is inclined to spend a bit more time here looking around, they're looking for that help, they can find more on the Find Continued Support tab. And here again, we've got more services that are less about immediate help, but more about, as we suggest, continued support. It could be for the individual, it could be for their family or something in the community. But there's just that little bit more for continued and ongoing support. We can close this pop-up and go back to our search results if we wish. Unfortunately for this word, there's nothing there. If we look now for one that's a lower severity search term, again, not using real words, but our test terms, we can see it's slightly different. So this is the low severity nudge, as we call it. It's a insertion in the search results page that shows our signposting. I'm in dark mode here, so my search engine results page is black. If it was white, it would be exactly the same color white, but we chose not to make it blend into the page in dark mode, so it does pop out. This nudge, you can scroll past, you don't need to close it, it's just there in a nice bright color. Again, pops out a bit more in dark mode, nice purples. And the service we've chosen for this one, because we only have space for one, is Talk to Frank and that phone number. So the call to action for the user would be the phone number or hitting visit Frank there. The second category to look at, I'm only going to do 2, don't worry, I'm not going through all 12, would be autism. So again, we have the same thing with autism and across the categories with the high severity and low severity. Please don't think that a low severity keyword means it's not important or disturbing for the person searching. It's just how we describe it to show a crisis pop-up or the nudge. So here's our one for autism. This one, there's small differences, but they're important differences. So on this one, we have the text message service from Shout coming up first. And we felt that's really important for particularly the autism crisis pop-up, as that's going to be a more comfortable way for someone who might struggle with language to communicate. So we have the text service for Shout there, and then a couple of other services, Mind and I guess, yeah, the other one's closed actually. So interestingly, we've only got 2 services now because service number 3, I forget, I think it's, I forget now, but that one is closed since I last looked at this pop up. So now we've got 2. Again, we're encouraged to call 999 if we feel that we're in immediate danger. And then we have our fine continued support with quite a few services here. And if it was before 5 o'clock, there would be more than the 3 that we have. We have a nice calming picture. This is illustrations, or these illustrations that are particular to each category that we've had designed up. And they purvey a sense of, or we would like them to purvey a sense of calm and encouragement and hope, and tie in with our message of hope. Then we have our last piece of the live demo, which is the low severity autism nudge. And predictably, in this case, we've chosen the text message service from Shout to get in touch. And again, this one you can scroll past. We've got the identical image there, and it pops out nicely, but it can just be scrolled past. So we might tend to use a nudge if there could be perhaps dual meaning for a search. So rather than show a crisis pop up for something that could be both, we might choose to use a nudge, or maybe it's just something a little bit less severe, but still indicates that person could well be looking for help. And we have this non-interrupting nudge to put our signposting where it might be needed. So yeah, that's all I've got, Alice.
Thank you, Dave. Really appreciate you going through that. So hopefully that was useful. You could see the full pop-up there, and also the nudge that we've introduced on 2 of those example categories. But as David mentioned before, that we've got 12 of those, 12 different categories now, providing support for people who are experiencing different challenges in life. So I mentioned earlier that mental health doesn't discriminate, and that really is no different to really our discussion with Ripple today. Ripple isn't for a particular demographic, it really is for everybody. And that starts at the beginning with individuals who can download Ripple for free on their laptop or desktop computer at home. We've got 60-second videos which provide step-by-step instructions on how you can download Ripple on our website, which is 𝗵𝗺suicideprevention.com. This is also something that parents and guardians can download for free at home to safeguard their young people as well. Secondly, Ripple is also completely free of charge for the education sector. So that means schools, colleges, universities, and actually charities as well. Completely free, and it can be deployed en masse. It's not a case of putting Ripple on each computer. They can all be deployed at once to thousands of computers simultaneously if they wanted to, and completely free. From a business perspective, Ripple is also available for any business, any organization, big or small. We've got some businesses that have deployed Ripple that have got less than 5 staff. We've got some organisations that have deployed Ripple that have got 6 figures, over six figures in terms of their workforce. It really is for everybody. Again, it can be downloaded and deployed en masse. And it just means that if anybody is struggling, finding things difficult, Ripple is there as a safety net in the background, so that it can provide that hope in that pivotal moment of crisis and get them the support that they need. And finally, Ripple is also available in venues, and that's predominantly managed by Craig.
Yeah, so Alice, some of the venues that we look after, we have football stadiums, rugby stadiums, we have shopping malls, student accommodation, transport hubs, university campuses, just to name a few. And also just a strength from what you were saying around the education stuff. Many of you will obviously be aware that statutory guidance is put out by the Department for Education when it comes to safeguarding of children and things like this. The Ripple tool will only strengthen the support mechanisms that you have in place for that. So this isn't a replacement, but it's an additional service that can be implemented on top of what you're already doing for your 𝗀𝗂𝗀𝗂 requirements or keeping children safe in education. So yeah, don't be afraid to get that added if you work in education.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Craig. Okay, so there's a couple of bits then to talk about before we go on to some of the questions that we've got in the chat. And I think really these are the kind of hot questions, if you like, that organisations will probably have for us. So the first one I'm going to direct towards David. If I'm a business now and I've already deployed Ripple for my workplace, is the expanded protection already activated for those users?
Okay, short form answer is no. The expanded protection is opt-in at the moment while we're in consultation with our users. So it can be activated on an organisation by organisation basis, and we can provide instructions for doing that.
All right, perfect. So we've got a full instructions on how organisations can activate the expansion of those categories if they've already got it.
Yes, we do. The thing is, we don't know who a lot of our users are on the whole. So schools, universities, colleges, they can just take the browser extension, install it, and off they go. We need to go through this consultation process to make sure that we're changing the core product that they know they've installed. And we want to make sure that everyone's happy with these extra categories that we're going to be triggering on.
Okay. And I think that relates to another question that I'm going to fire at you, Dave, that isn't on this list, which is, if, again, I was a business and I've got Ripple in place, and I want to activate maybe half of those categories that we've spoken about today and perhaps not the other half, how would that work?
It's a simple case of configuring the browser extension. You can turn each category on or off, or enable it essentially individually. So it can be all, some, or just the one.
Perfect. Okay. And I've just quickly seen a comment coming through from Steve as well, which is there an extra cost for the opt-in to the extra categories? And the answer to that is no. It's all part of Ripple's expansion, but no cost to that at all. Okay, so the next question I've got here, Craig, is for yourself. Is the expanded protection available over Wi-Fi as of yet?
So yes, we will be including it. That will be a gradual rollout. So the first one that we will be rolling out will be substance abuse to the Wi-Fi solution. As we onboard those, we'll make our customers aware of it. But yes, we will be expanding out those categories to our user base. So yeah, exciting times.
Yeah, fantastic. And then the final one I've got on the screen here is, does Ripple also protect harmful searches that are conducted on YouTube, where people are potentially looking for harmful video-based content?
Yeah, so I'll go, David, if you want. YouTube, I think for most people now, YouTube is a search engine in itself, and it's treated exactly the same. So when the end user is looking for content on YouTube, we treat it no differently to Google, Yahoo, or many of the other search engines. So we can match those key phrases and keywords that David talked about earlier, and trigger the tool accordingly.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Craig. Okay, so I'm just going to have a look and see if there are any other questions that are coming through on the chat today. Luke, I see you've answered Sue's question here, which is, we work in the university sector and pay. Is this because it's through our Wi-Fi? Yes, it is. The browser extension for all education sector is completely free. But if it is done through the Wi-Fi, there is a standardized cost that we have to charge, because we work collaboratively with NetSweeper in order to provide that solution. And I don't think we've got many others, really. We've got one here from Steve, actually. We know that many searches for harmful content are done through mobile phones. How can we ensure that the younger people in our lives are protected? Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, I can take that one. Again, I think we've mentioned it. I think obviously we see the DNS solution. So when people are in these areas like coffee shops, McDonald's, shopping malls, sporting events, in school, having the Wi-Fi solution in play ensures that those students or those younger users looking at content, the message can intervene there and then for them. We all know that the likes of Apple and Android are locking down from a privacy perspective, but with the Wi-Fi solution that we have in play, that can overcome that. So it's about getting it in as many places as possible.
Thank you very much, Craig. And we've also got one, Dave, that I think you might be able to help us with here. As you know, users can close the Ripple pop-up, and they can continue on with their search. And as a result, they could potentially be looking at harmful content. And Steve says, I know we've discussed this before when Ripple first launched, but could you confirm if this is still the case and why that is still the case?
It could end up being it could be a rather long answer, potentially. So yes, we've discussed this at length with advisory boards, with clinical leads, with content filtering professionals, and with those who have lived experience. In order for our signposting to be used, it has to be accessible and friendly. If we're just a block page, that's immediately negative, and someone doesn't want to interact with the block page. We want them to interact with our extension. The data we have shows that a user will, on average, activate our extension twice. So that means they've searched for something that's triggered the pop-up. In this case, the data we have is for suicide and self-harm. And we know that our users trigger that extension at least one more time. So they know searching for this is going to bring up the signposting, and they search for it again. That means we know that they know where to go for that signposting and support. And we also know that 50% of those users interact, click on, and make use of the extension. So it's part of our philosophy not to block. And in the end, if we did, a determined person is going to go off and find that content elsewhere. So we'd rather be there and be on the machine. You can circumvent it, you can close it if you wish, but we're there as a little safety net without perhaps causing any shame or negative feeling that you've performed that kind of search.
Yeah, and quite often it does, Dave. Thank you very much. And I think quite often the feedback that we've also got from users that have interacted with Ripple is that sometimes it is all it takes is that simple nudge or that simple intervention at that pivotal moment to actually get them to support and to signpost them to that relevant channel where they can go and get help. And that's really important, because we think it's absolutely about timing here as well. And as David said, and I think Craig mentioned this earlier as well, if we simply block, somebody will just go on another device and search for it, search for the harmful content. We're going that step further and signposting them to support at that pivotal moment. And our stats show that that works, which is fantastic. And Steve ultimately stops people feeling how you and I feel, really. Right, so we're at time. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining this session this evening. A huge thank you to Dave and Craig, not to be confused with Craig David, who both joined the call today. Both joined the call today to help demonstrate our expansion, which is very exciting. A huge thank you to all of our clients, customers, schools, colleges, universities that we work with, in order to help as many people as possible with their mental health. And a huge thank you also to our advisory board members, without whom none of this would be possible. Do remember as well, if you are interested in deploying Ripple, please do get in touch with us. Our website is on the slide in front of you here, or you can email us, which is info@𝗵𝗺𝗀𝗍prevention.com. And you will see very shortly in the comments that there's going to be a link to an article about our expanded protection within these new categories, and also some images that you're able to share to spread the word and let people know about what we're doing here at Ripple. Any final thoughts, guys, before we head off?
I was just going to signpost education people, education charities to a specific individual on our side, which is Sam. So reach out to Sam for all your education deployment needs, and Luke, who you've seen in the comments. If you're part of a business, commercial enterprise, you can reach out to him directly as well for any inquiry about Ripple.
Thanks very much, Dave, and thank you all.